Good evening, Commissioner Sullivan.
Good evening, Chairman Gray.
Thank you very much for being so patient
Cheh.
with us. We've had a long day, and we wanted to make sure we stay as long as necessary, because this has been a very enjoyable, informative process to meet with each one of the ANCs. So this was to be our last night. We'll probably have another night now, so we can get some of the other these 6 commissions in. But I just want to thank you for staying with us this evening.
You're welcome. It's been a long day probably for everybody in this room. Yeah. And I appreciate you staying and holding this oversight hearing.
Absolutely.
I've been looking forward to it.
Glad to. Before you start, we want to make sure that you note, as well as others, that on the TV screen we have 3E, which is bordered by Western Avenue on the west, Military Road and Reno Road on the kind of northeast, Wisconsin Avenue, Nebraska Avenue on the east, and Massachusetts Avenue to the south.
That's correct. Basically, we're in Upper Northwest D.C., and we represent Tenleytown, American University Park, and Friendship Heights. And I'd like to make a plug for sign language interpreters at ANC meetings. Commissioner Levine brought that up for his ANC, and I know that's been brought up in the ANCs near Gallaudet University. And I'd like to give full disclosure, I'm a sign language interpreter by trade. And I was astonished at the low amount that he was paying the sign language interpreters, and they're practically volunteer at that rate. And I don't think it would be fair to burden any one ANC with the type of fees that they should be paying. And so I think maybe
Is your microphone on?
It is.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Catching my husband's cold. I try not to blame it on him, but it is his. I just think that maybe that would be one of my recommendations, that there be funds set aside from the government, because I'm sure when you have council hearings and you have sign language interpreters when there are deaf people in the audience, that you don't take it out of your budget just for Mr. Gray's budget. You would take it out of the city budget. So,
well, we have a council budget that has to cover whatever we,
right.
You know,
and there would be an
spend,
ANC budget for the entire ANC, correct? It wouldn't just be...
No, there actually isn't. We have Mr. Steinman's office, which is a very small operation. It's just him and one other person.
Right.
But there is no citywide ANC budget. It's an allotment to each one of the 37 commissions.
Okay.
So the commissions would be, at least as currently structured, expected to, do what they need to do out of their allotment. How big is your allotment?
Our allotment is, I believe it's $14,378.80.
Okay. So you have a relatively
We
small...
have a fairly small one. We have a 5 single-member district commission. Right. Currently, 4 of the positions are filled. One is not. Our Commissioner Talia Primor moved out of her SMD, and I just found out tonight that she has not yet submitted her letter to the Board of Elections. We were under the impression that she had. So if we want to get the ball rolling for the remainder of this term, we're going to need to have her do that and then get going in the next 3 weeks. So.
Yeah, we had some conversation on several occasions during these hearings about trying to figure out how we can create a more efficient process so that it isn't such a protracted period once once these vacancies occur.
Well, I think it hinges on the notification. Somebody could say, I quit, I've had it, after a particularly contentious meeting, and you wouldn't want to take them at their word at that point. You want to have something in writing. So I think that it's important that a commissioner who is going to resign would send the letter in.
Yeah, if you know someone is moving, that's certainly definitive.
Right.
And
well, once they've moved, it is. You're correct. But I don't know if she's re-registered. So, yeah, I agree. There's need there. And then I'd also like to clarify. There was a question about whether or not the council is supposed to give the ANCs great weight, and I was handed this copy of the DC code that specifically addresses this, and it says each ANC may advise the council of the District of Columbia, the mayor, and each executive agencies, all independent agencies, boards, and commissions of the government of the District of Columbia with respect to all proposed matters of district government policy. And then it goes on to say what is included in all the different types of policies, and it's certainly not limited to what's in here. As to whether or not they have to give great weight, we can always advise, and I don't know exactly the answer to great weight. Yeah, and the whole issue of great weight, frankly, it's open to interpretation.
I don't know how we get a finite, uniform understanding of great weight. And there's some who I think believe great weight is been given if your position prevails, but if it doesn't prevail, it hasn't been given.
Well,
And
no,
others
I would
don't,
not agree with that. I think great weight is a consideration of the ANCs and the constituents that they represent, not just the members on the commission. We really do represent our constituents. So what it means is you're considering the views and values of those people. And just like sometimes parents consider the children's requests for a bigger allowance and they say no, but they can tell them why.
That's the key point, I think, and that is to get an answer to your position.
Exactly.
Rather than feel ignored. And it may be no at the end of the day, but it's no because of the following reasons.
Right. And then the constituents can make up their mind later at the next election whether or not they like their parents anymore. I'd like to cut out a lot of my testimony on sort of the possibly the more mundane aspects of the ANC and go to the heart of what I think is most important for me to talk with you about tonight.
Absolutely.
And our biggest challenges involve the issue of development, and the issues surface on a variety of different levels. Typically, there's a specific project where a developer wants to build something that's not consistent with the zoning laws, and the PUDs require zoning commission approval. And our role is to try to get the developer to work with critics in the community about their projects, if there are any, and try to address their concerns. And we would like to have more of a role in vetting the PUD amenities to make sure that they really do ameliorate the negative impacts of a project or address community concerns, rather than what they have been used historically, at least in our area, is to buy support cheaply from residents unlikely to be otherwise affected. But not surprisingly, developers resist such involvement of the ANC. There are other situations regarding development, like the Commerce Bank on Wisconsin Avenue, and prior to that, the infamous radio tower. And it's usually a permitting issue, and in this case, our role often becomes an investigative role and even sort of bureaucratic oversight. And we try to keep things, administrative agencies, honest and accountable, not just to business interests and their lawyers, but to the law itself and to the communities. And it's right here in my testimony. Our biggest challenge and frustration is that of not being accorded great weight. And this is true at every level of government, from regulatory agencies to executive departments to the council to the mayor. The law provides that comments must be given great weight. That means if action is to be taken contrary to the ANC's advice, a written explanation must be provided point by point that shows why the advice isn't followed. Sometimes the issue is really minor or relatively minor to those who don't live on 46th Street, but it would be a minor example might be speed bumps on 46th Street. Other times the issue has a larger impact and has been the subject of many contentious special committee meetings, such as the removal of the River Road barrier. But the most serious case we've encountered yet has been the issuance of a request for proposals to sell off our public school land and library air rights without allowing the ANC to weigh in on the advisability of that action. And I go into my testimony a little bit of history of that very serious case where a developer approached the community and the Ward 3 council member with an unsolicited bid to buy the development rights on Janney School land and the Tenley Friendship Library. And while the ANC took up this matter and was meeting with community members and government agency representatives, we wanted to gather data, analyze our findings, and disseminate the information to the community so that an informed population could weigh in on this matter. Councilmember Cheh, along with Councilmember Brown, sent a letter to the mayor early on in that process without letting us know that they were urging him to pursue the land sale. So this happened without ANC knowledge or input and without the benefit of public knowledge or input. And then the DMPED made the decision to issue the RFP before the ANC's announced and planned community meeting where we were going to assess support of or opposition to the idea. The ANC was also ignored when it passed resolution after resolution about this project. We rejected the issuance of the RFP until such time as the land could be evaluated in terms of the students' and library patrons' needs, and it had been if it would be declared no longer needed for public use by the D.C. Council. That's what you are supposed to do when you sell off public land. But there was no written government response to that, nor even the courtesy of a verbal response. Once the draft RFP was issued over our objections, the ANC passed a resolution with 13 recommendations for revision of the RFP. Again, we were completely ignored, and I might add we were ignored to the point where we included typographical errors and a minor matter of spelling of my name, and that was ignored. The $83,000 that they spent on this RFP being written didn't take into account even the most trivial correction or recommendation that we made. So more than resolutions have been ignored. We've asked questions about the process that led to the issuance of the RFP. We didn't get an explanation. We've been denied the right to information about the process that's been used for this project and future projects. If this is going to be an example for the city to follow in future years, I think that's a really relevant and important point across the city, not just for this particular parcel of land. We asked DCPS for their evaluation of the site and a site plan that would show that you could fit all the necessary facilities on the land and still have room left over to sell off to a developer. Never happened. The DMPED made a decision to significantly alter the RFP 2 weeks before the proposals were due, and they didn't inform us of this change. We learned of the change through one of the developers who was quite exercised about the fact that he had 2 weeks to significantly change his proposal when one of the proposals had somehow anticipated this change. So we passed a resolution to withdraw that RFP at that point so it could be rewritten and sent back for bids if they determined that the site could spare the land. That was also ignored. We asked to see the specifics, particularly the financial information of the 3 proposals. Instead, we got a community meeting held by the DMPED where members were not allowed to speak or interact directly with the developers. They had to write their questions on a little card, and there was a very short amount of time, and the DMPED could censor and decide which questions got asked. So the ANC held its own meetings with those developers, so the community could ask questions and interact directly. We've now sent our report along with the recommendation to leave the modernization of the school to DCPS and to abandon the pursuit of a development project on the site. Dare we hope that this time at last our advice will be given great weight? It's really hard not to answer that question cynically. So the frustration and the sense of futility that occur when the work of the ANC is tossed aside without consultation with commissioners and without the proper written notification of matters that are coming before certain agencies and why the ANC's advice isn't followed can be staggering. Even more importantly, though, ignoring the ANC is evidence that the voices of the constituents of the ANC are not heard. ANCs are transparent, deliberative, and accountable representative bodies. They can't be replaced by selectively announced email plebiscites, groups that claim to speak for the community, but they are not the elected representatives. At least not if we want neighborhoods to have a voice in city government. And I think we do, not only for the sake of individual communities, but for the sake of the city as a whole. The issues we face have resonance in other neighborhoods, and when one ANC is run roughshod over, another's more easily discounted. It's time for the mayor, the council, and the DC government agencies to follow the guidelines for giving the ANCs great weight in decisions that impact their communities. Otherwise, it makes no sense to even have an elected body such as the ANC. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me ask you I want to ask you some of the basic questions that we have asked each one of the commissioners as they've come forward. How many people normally attend your meetings? Well,
As all the others have said, if there isn't anything too terribly exciting going on, we'll probably have about 20, 25 people, but we've had ANC and community meetings that have run 100, 150 people times 200.
What characteristically have been those kinds of issues?
Definitely this land sale issue for the school and the library, that's been a biggie. But in past years, the Upper Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Study, which aimed to write a small area plan for the Upper Wisconsin Avenue for development. So development issues in general, development projects in specific are big draws. They really get the rear ends in the seat.
Do you have any retail establishments that have ABC licenses in
Yes, we do. We have several, and there are licenses come up for renewal. Some of them have voluntary agreements, some of them don't. Generally, we haven't had huge issues, but when they come up, quite a few people come out for those meetings as well.
How much is your allotment?
14, what did they say? I had it written down. $14,378.80.
And how much do you have in the bank?
We have two accounts. We have a savings account, which is actually our smaller account. It's got about $5,000 or $6,000 in it, and our checking account currently is up to about $27,000, I believe. And I didn't bring my reports
Sounds
with
like
me.
you almost want to flip it.
Pardon me?
Sounds like you'd like to.
The bank keeps trying to make us do it, but actually we like to give grants, and so if we keep the smaller amount in our checking account, we'll have to rob from our savings account anyway to give the grants.
Can't you connect them in a way that, you know, they automatically move money when it reaches a certain level in the checking account?
Yeah, I probably should look into that. That would be a good
I'm sure
thing.
they do that. It would maximize whatever interest return you're likely to get, which isn't much these days, but
Right,
you know,
well,
2 or
it's
3%
better
beats the
than the stock market. I'd like to apologize, too, that our ANC 3E chairperson couldn't be here tonight. Amy McVeigh is an accountant, and it's tax time, so
This is her time of the year, right?
that's that time of the year, yeah.
Who handles the bank reconciliations?
I take it online. I get the statements online, and then I handle that reconciliation, and then there's a paper statement that goes to our ANC office, and our administrator brings those to the meeting unopened. We open them at the meeting and look at the two, and our chairperson or whoever is handling the meeting will sign them. So,
Do you have a budget?
yes, we do. We have an annual budget.
How much is your budget this year?
I'm really sorry, I wasn't prepared. I didn't bring that, but I can get you
Okay.
that information later. But we did pass a budget, and you know, we allowed for all different categories of expenses, and it's pretty laid out. And we have a record of what we had budgeted for last year and what our actual was last year, so I can get that to you too.
You know, we've heard varying views on grant making. Some do it like you've indicated that your commission does, and others, and just some of those who testified, you know, before you, are steadfastly opposed to it. What is it that led your commission to believe that that was an exercise you'd like to be involved with?
I don't know what led to that decision, because this is only my third year as a commissioner, and they've had a long history of giving grants, and I think they feel that's part of their role, is to help enhance the character and the nature of the community. So as long as the grant is something that can benefit constituents, it's pretty open. It can't be something that is just specific to one little private group. It has to be something that'll benefit the whole ANC.
How much in grants do you award annually?
Well, we used to have grant periods twice a year, and we would give up to about a total of $5,000 twice a year.
So
And
10,000 annually?
so about $10,000 annually. We haven't done that for a little
How
while.
many grantees do you have?
Usually about five. I think we set a limit somewhere around $1,000, up to $1,000, and there are a lot of requirements on the grants, and that's a hassle, and that can be burdensome sometimes. So I can understand why some ANCs don't want to do it, but because if the recipients don't follow all the rules and they don't spend it all at once and they don't turn in their receipts, et cetera, the money then is taken out of the ANC budget.
I was going to ask you, have you lost any of your allotment because of people not giving
We
you
have, not when
documentation?
I've been an ANC commissioner, but there's a history of that, yeah.
That seemed to be one of the reasons why some of the ANCs didn't want to do it. Because they make the grant, let's say it's $1,000, and if they don't get back $500 of the receipts, then they're going to have it removed from their allotment in the future.
We have a pretty tough administrative assistant. You know, we call her Guido sometimes. Send her out.
But she can get those.
She gets those
then.
receipts. Yeah, yeah, she's pretty.
How's your relationship with the auditor?
It's good. It's good.
What about the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions?
When the commission, ANC3E Commission, was discussing how I would respond tonight to the questionnaire and then also tonight, they really wanted me to go on and on at length about Gottlieb. He's wonderful. We rely on him. He has patience. He's held our hand. He's dried our tears. He's shored us up. He's a wonderful man, and he's quite knowledgeable. That's been
a uniform response to Gottlieb.
Yeah.
So this has been I'm sure, a delightful experience for him over the last 4 days of these hearings.
I hope so.
And he now has an assistant working with him, so
Good.
hopefully we can extend the reach a little bit more to provide that kind of support to the commissions. What additional 1 or 2 goals do you want to focus on with your commission the rest of this year?
We're looking at the DDOT's visitor parking permit pilot, so that's one. But I think an overarching main goal in our community seems to be to try to calm down the divisive nature of development issues. It's a hot issue. There's a lot of back and forth on the listservs, and I don't even read the blogs anymore because they're so ugly. And what our chairperson would like to do, and if she were here tonight, she could talk a little bit more about it, but she would like to set up a working group that would try to help different factions come to some kind of agreement, so we're not rehashing the same debate every time there's a project that's brought to us. So we're just going to try to find some way to help people find common overarching goals and to work towards those goals rather than to spend so much of our energy fighting.
Good idea.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Councilmember Cheh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Can I ask you, you have testimony here, and does this testimony reflect the views of all the members of the
Absolutely.
ANC? And they read through this and they approve of all the words that are in here?
They approved of my draft, and I might have made some editorial changes that they haven't seen.
They're in agreement with this?
Absolutely.
Okay, let me ask you, and I assume when you prepared this testimony, you believe that it's important to be accurate?
As much as possible.
And I assume you think that it's important not to, by implication, mislead?
Absolutely. Correct me if I'm wrong anywhere in the testimony.
Well, let me ask you for a moment to turn to page 2. You have a paragraph in there. It's the paragraph near the end. It says, a developer approached the community.
Yes.
Okay. Let me just ask you a couple of questions. It says, a developer approached the community and the Ward 3 council member. Are you saying the developer approached me directly?
Well, it's our understanding that you met with the community and the developer.
Are you saying that the developer the sentence is a developer approached the community and Ward 3 council member with an unsolicited bid, etc. Is the implication there that the developer came to me and approached me with this unsolicited bid?
My implication is that the developer approached the community, and that would encompass the Ward 3 council member,
Okay.
and that you met about it.
If that's so, then that is misleading, because that suggests that the developer came to me directly with an unsolicited bid to develop that site. And you
would say that's not true.
Well, I'm asking you what you meant to say, because we'll get to the facts in a moment. You're claiming that the developer came to me with an unsolicited bid to develop that site. Is that correct?
I'm claiming the issue came before you.
Well, that's a lot different than suggesting that the developer approached the Ward 3 council member with an unsolicited bid, etc. Okay, let's move on. Then you say in this particular paragraph that Councilmember Cheh, along with Councilmember Brown, sent a letter to the mayor urging him to pursue this land sale. Do you have a copy of the letter?
I do in my files.
Okay. Now, if you were to look at that letter says that there are advantages to having a comprehensive development of the site. But the thrust of that letter was to make sure that there wasn't a single bid, that there were multiple bids, if we were to move in that direction.
No, I'm not implying that you said that you should just sell it to roadside. I said that you urging him to pursue this land sale.
You know, let's look at the language, okay? If I were to read this. Councilmember Cheh, along with Councilmember Brown, sent a letter to the mayor urging him to pursue this land sale. You know,
This land,
I understand the English language, and the implication there is that Councilmember Brown and I wrote a letter to the mayor urging him to pursue the land sale aforementioned in your paragraph.
On June 6th, yes.
And that
this
letter,
land sale of Janney Land and the library.
That letter says that there are advantages to comprehensively developing the site, but that we shouldn't rely on an unsolicited bid.
Correct.
And it was our recommendation to the mayor that if we were to pursue this, it should be with an RFP.
Correct.
Right, and that is not the implication of your language.
Okay, well,
Furthermore,
that's your interpretation.
no, it's not my interpretation. I think that when you present testimony to this council and make this public, that you ought to be careful to be accurate when you're in effect making some charges here. You go on to say that this happened without ANC input or knowledge and without benefit of public input. Now, is it your contention that before I write a letter to the mayor about my view of something, I need your input?
You knew that we were studying this? You knew that we were having meetings about it?
Is
We
it
were
your
vetting it?
contention that as an elected member of this council, I'm not to write a letter to the mayor expressing my view on a matter without your input? Is that what your contention is?
Does it say I think you shouldn't?
I'm asking you a question.
I know
Is it
you're asking me
your
a question, but I'm
is it
saying it
your
happened
view-
without it. Did I put a
is-
value judgment on that?
Is it your view that before an elected member of the Council of the District of Columbia sends a letter to the mayor that they must seek the ANC input? Is that your view, yes or
Well,
no?
that's pretty absurd, but that's not what's applied here.
Is that your view?
You know, I don't think this is
Is
a trial, Councilmember
is that
Cheh,
your
and I would
view?
ask you
You're
to let me
testifying.
finish my sentence.
I'm asking you to answer my question. Is that
Yes,
your
but
view?
you're interrogating me, and
Would-
I'd like you to let me talk about this rather than
I
interrogate
would like
me.
to have your answer. Is it yes or is it no?
Any letter you send the mayor, any letter at all that you send the mayor,
Is it
you
yes
think
or
I
no?
imply that the ANC has to see that?
You won't.
Is that what you're asking me? I want to be
You
clear
won't
on
answer the
your question.
And then you said this happened without any ANC input or knowledge and without the benefit of public input. Now, are you aware that there were many meetings in the community about this matter prior to that time?
I'm aware of small group meetings, and I'm aware of the ANC meeting
Right. So when you're saying without the
But I'm
benefit of public input,
on the letter that you wrote.
so that there was no public input on the matter of the Tenley-Janney Library development.
Well, selective input.
Well, it didn't meet your level of input perhaps, but it says without the benefit of public input.
How many of those groups knew you wrote that letter?
The language here, I'm questioning your language, says without the benefit of public input. That's a categorical statement. That's not true. Okay? That's another thing that's not true. And then your next
How about
sentence,
without the publicity?
then your next sentence is, the deputy mayor then made the decision as if it is in a direct line, so that the letter was sent and then the deputy mayor made a decision. This paragraph,
That occurred after the letter.
if anybody reads this paragraph, I would defy them to see this as a benign statement. It is rather a charge. It is a charge against me. And I think it's inaccurate and misleading. It is as inaccurate and misleading as some of the memoranda of concern that you have put out about this project, suggesting, for example, that I have a conflict of interest, that I've engaged
We never
in...
suggested you had a conflict of interest,
Yes, you
Councilmember
have.
Cheh.
And
That's false.
And that I have engaged in something suggesting...
Where does it say that in the causes of concern?
Well, we can get the memoranda. I
Go
don't
ahead,
have them
go
in
get
front
it.
of me. But I suggest to you that you can take whatever position you want, but when you put things in paper, when you testify before this council, when you go out in public, it should be accurate and not misleading. And I believe your testimony on these points is both inaccurate and misleading. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I disagree.
Thank you, Councilmember Cheh. Thank you very much, Commissioner Sullivan. We appreciate your service, not only as a commissioner serving a single-member district, but also as the treasurer, which is got to be a demanding job as well to keep track. I mean, frankly, keeping track of $20,000 is probably as time-consuming as $200,000 or $2 million, because the same principles are involved.
Right.
Again, thank you very much for staying
You're
with
welcome.
us this evening, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.